It's been a while since I was in high school and had pieces of homework that I'd consider worthless enough to essentially not even think about. I used to watch either YouTube or anime while I worked, but the content was always what I considered background quality. See, even though I was only half paying attention to my homework, that was still half of my attention away from whatever I was watching, so it was never the YouTubers or anime I really wanted to pay attention to. I'd pick stuff that I thought was super easy to follow and didn't need a lot of thought put into it. And one time, the anime I picked was Lucky Star. Now, Lucky Star is an anime that has been around for quite some time now, and it is well loved by a legion of fans. On the surface, it looks like a typical moe slice-of-life anime that mostly promises a happy means of escape from reality. Surely this show didn't shoulder any serious narrative weight, right? The first few episodes of Lucky Star are not the most liked. If the first episode was handed to me in peer review, I would probably say the conversation about how to eat various foods goes on way too long. Especially since the discussion of which end of a chocolate cornet is the head is a gag that is returned to throughout the show. Almost 6.5 minutes spent on a single conversation for the second scene of your first episode is risky. But I argue that it works. Yes, the conversation is very boring, but in combination with the rest of the episode, everything that an opening needs to accomplish is successful. Still, there are more interesting ways of getting the information presented by the conversation into the story, so why go for the boring one? The Latin term in medias res is used when a narrative starts in the middle of something important, whether it's a battle, or a business deal, or a death. It throws the reader right into the heart of what the story is at the very beginning. This conversation is doing precisely that in a very calculated manner. These girls are not meeting right now. They've been friends for a long time by this point, and they've reached that point of friendship where they'll talk about anything forever. Specifically, they are 2 years into high school out of 4, which differentiates the anime from the original source material. Halfway. Remember that, because it will be important later. Now, making a super boring conversation is definitely a subtle but effective way of establishing that the viewer is looking into a status quo that had been established long before. It's definitely risky. It's not unheard of, though. It's exactly what they did for the first episode of The Office, at least the American version. The actors were instructed to spend some time in front of the cameras typing on their computers, printing files, using the vending machine, and so on. Of course, The Office splices in other scenes throughout the mundane B-roll, and Lucky Star does something similar by doing a few unrelated comedy bits throughout the episode. My overall point is that something is allowed to be boring if that was the intention, but it will be an uphill battle to keep your readers invested after you play that card. Lucky Star in particular took a risk because, as a comedy, it's expected to keep interest through engagement, and as a slice of life, there is already a genre expectation of unintentionally becoming boring. If none of that convinces you that spending the first episode like that was smart, good. It probably shouldn't. The first episode's hidden genius needs time to marinate. You will understand why during the last part of this video. Exaggeration is one of, if not the most common comedic strategy employed in writing today. Something to remember when using exaggeration is that characterization needs to be scaled accordingly. If the world of your comedy is designed to serve a dark satire on the working conditions of food service today, an over-the-top slapstick protagonist is probably not the way to go. If your world is made to serve a sitcom, then a purely realistic protagonist is also an unlikely direction to go. One example is in The Simpsons episode Homer's Enemy. Frank Grimes is supposed to be a very realistic person in values and expectations, so he is the foil to the exaggerated world of The Simpsons. Notice that he wouldn't work as the main protagonist for the entire series. The comedy of Frank Grimes is rooted in how different he is from the other characters. Lucky Star is not nearly as exaggerated as The Simpsons in its world building, but it does step out of strict realism in favor of bending the rules here and there for effect. Therefore, the cast of Lucky Star are tuned for such a world. They are realistic, but they are exaggerated in subtle ways that usually follow pre-established stereotypes. For example, Konata is an otaku to a degree that isn't realistic, Yes, I'm aware that Japan has needs, but Konata is exaggerated because she watches every anime and plays every game, but isn't a NEET. In fact, the very first scene of the show juxtaposes her love of watching TV with her natural athleticism. Another example is Kagami. She's the most realistic character in the show, but she's exaggerated in that she's a textbook tsundere. Real tsunderes try to act natural as a defense from their positive feelings that they think would embarrass them. Yet Kagami is the epitome of, "it's not that I like you or anything," characterization that fictional tsunderes in anime are often written as. My favorite scene demonstrating that part of her is when Konata comes over to her house and makes sounds in an electric fan. Kagami immediately acts superior to her and says it's a childish thing to do, and she knew Konata would try it, just to be outed for doing it herself before Konata arrived. It's a simple but effective scene to reinforce Kagami's role as the story's tsundere. The cast of Lucky Star does grow beyond the original four, but the show manages to successfully establish all of them as unique characters with roles in the plot that suit each one of them. At minimum, every character participates fully in at least one B-plot. Large casts fail when you have characters who only exist to exist. Stories require movement, so every character involved needs to be a part of that movement, or their static nature will deeply irritate readers. The Lucky Channel segment of every episode is kind of its own thing, but as it closely follows two characters, Minoru Shirashi and Akira Kogami, I'm going to talk about it here. This segment breaks the fourth wall as it parodies the type of talk shows that are attached to other series. Think The Walking Dead being followed by The Talking Dead. The segment's humor is primarily based on its failure to actually talk about Lucky Star. There are attempts to do it seriously, but Akira's toxicity starts to wear down Minoru so much that they eventually snap and start fighting, with their conflict even seeping into the main show at times. Compared to the very positive and sweet humor of Lucky Star, Lucky Channel's more sarcastic approach is a nice chaser. Time in Lucky Star is what ultimately led to me making this commentary. Now, I don't have exact time frames here as few are given in the show, but there's a few things to establish. I'm not talking about extras, so for our purposes, Lucky Star is a single season consisting of 24 episodes. Something that makes Lucky Star odd is that this one season has 2 Christmas-themed episodes, 2 summer breaks, etc. On top of that, each episode is laid out as a series of moments that are not necessarily one after the other. Each episode has time skips of a few minutes, hours, or even days. What's going on? I estimate that most episodes take place approximately a month apart from one another, with some episodes being closer together. One single season to us is 2 years to the characters. We watch their lives on fast forward. And now, we need to look at the first episode again. Remember when I said it was important that the show starts halfway through high school? As we are watching the characters faster than they experience time, we start noticing the changes faster than they do. It's the frog in the pot scenario. These girls can't imagine life away from each other, but it's already clear to the viewers that their time together is coming to an end before they even suspect it. The reason the first episode is boring on a first watch is because this show demonstrates more than anything else a saying I heard a long time ago that has stuck with me. The days are long, but the years are short. The first episode is our first few days with them, so it feels long while they don't seem to notice how long they are talking about nothing. Our days, their years. The wake-up call for them is the last episode. There were inklings before, but the 24th episode, to be decided, is when they finally accept that the end is near. They don't graduate in the episode, but rather the episode covers the preparation for their last school festival. Patty, the American foreign exchange student, enrolls all of the main cast into a cheerleading act. She explains that she jumped on the opportunity because she wanted to make one more special memory with her friends before she has to return to America. It's hinted at throughout the episode that the cheerleading act in question is the one shown in the opening of every episode except this one. In fact, the only time in the episode that they do the performance is their rehearsal. The series officially ends as the curtain is raised for them to do the real thing. Effectively, it bookends the show because the first episode starts with them anxiously awaiting the opening before it starts. One final question is raised. In a show about the daily lives of these characters, does it really end when the last canonical moment is actually the start of the opening? Which end of the chocolate cornet is the head?